All right, Bruchim Aboyim, welcome everyone. I believe this is the last installment of this particular Torah from Rabbeinu Nachman ben Fega Breslov Schusi Galeinu Oakland Sulamein. We're in the last portion of Torah Samach Dalid 64, Likutei Moharan, which, as we said, it is based on last week's Parsha, Parsha's Bo. I learned it over Shabbos. And we took our time learning it, Baruch Hashem, now again here together. And like we said, it also mentions something from this week's Parsha, from Parshas Beshalach, about Oz Yashir, about the whole inyan of Shira, of Negina, of Zmiras, of Zemer, of music and song. And now we bring everything back to the beginning. So we bring it full circle. So the Dvar Torah began, now this is the explanation, Vayomer Hashem al Moshe boyel paroi kini ichbadati. And it says, the Lord said unto Moses, Go, come ye unto Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart. And it says, Paroi hu bechinas cholol aponoi. Very interesting. Again, if you didn't watch the previous videos, watch those first. This is the 6th installment. And I believe the final one I might be mistaken on that, of this particular Dvar Torah. So, Pharaoh, very interestingly, is the archetype of the vacuum, of the empty space, which was necessary to create the world, to give us free will, and for anything to actually exist at all separately from God, even though everything is God, but to have that existence separate from God. Kipar and bittul, because the word Pharaoh, is a term of cancellation, of nullification, as it says in Exodus chapter 5 verse 4, to frio esa'am, that they have interrupted the people from doing their slave labor. But also the word Pharaoh is a terminology of revelation, which is the archetype of the vacuum, of the empty space, which is cancelled, which is nullified, and empty from everything. And within it is the revelation of all of creation exists within that empty vacuum, as we said above. And there in the vacuum, there in the empty space, there is kvedus, there's heaviness. Kvedus slave, heaviness of the heart. Because it's impossible to really grasp and understand the archetype of the vacuum, of the empty space, as we said above. And all wisdoms that come from there have a heaviness of the heart, that they're left over with these questions against God, because it's that empty space that God created in order for the world to exist. So it has to be there has to be the potential for atheism in order for the world to exist, in order for there to be free will. It's impossible to find God there, because God emptied his godliness from there, kiviyachol, as if such a thing was possible. As a matter of speaking, it's of course God is there, but he withdrew his revelation there in order to make the revelation possible within it. In order for the creation to exist at all, as we said above. And therefore, Vayomer Hashem al Moshe boy, the Lord said to Moses, come. Specifically, Moses should come to Pharaoh. Moses is the one who can come to the archetype of the empty space, of the vacuum, because it's forbidden for anyone else to go there unless you are the archetype of Moses, as we said above, because Moses is the archetype of silence, which is the archetype of pure faith without any words, without any wisdom. because the archetype of Moses, as we said above, is impossible to find God there. So you have to overcome it and through silence and just have pure faith, as we said above. And this is the meaning of Ki ani ichbadati es libo v'sleiv avadav. For I have hardened his heart and the heart of his servants. The servants are the archetype of the introductions of all the wisdoms, of all the sciences, because each science, each wisdom has introductions, and they are called the servants who are serving the wisdom. Meaning all of the wisdoms, all of the sciences, and all of the introductions to the prefaces to the science books, to the wisdoms, to the literature, and not only the literature, but the actual wisdom itself that is in the archetypical form before it's written down, also has a hakdama, also has an introduction, also has a forward, also has a preface. And they all come from that empty space. They all come from that archetype of the empty vacuum, because there is a heaviness of heart that is remaining there with questions, as we said above. And this is the meaning of Laman Shisi Oisai Sayela B'Kibro, in order to increase these my signs in its midst, in his midst. Meaning that which I have hardened his heart, that's why I made his heart heavy. It's impossible to find God there. Even though God is there, is so hidden, it's impossible to find. And this was in order to increase the signs, meaning that I should increase in his midst the signs of the letters of the creation, meaning in order that the creation should be able to exist there within the empty vacuum, where there was the tzimtzum, where there was the withdrawal and the emptiness of God's godliness was moved out of there, so to speak. Of course, again, God is there. It's just that this is the illusion, the optical delusion that God created in order for the universe to exist, as Einstein said. Because if he did not withdraw his godliness from there, there would be no place for creation, as we said above. And this is the meaning of Laman Tesaper, and for the sake of telling over the story, because there within creation, that was created within the empty vacuum, there it's possible to tell a story. There it's possible to speak. There, because there within creation, that's within the empty space, there are letters and there are words, and that through them, all of creation came into existence, as we said above. And this is what it means in order to tell into Bosne Vincho Uven Bincho. You should say it into the ears of thy son and thy son's son, thy grandson. Because Ikar Kalabria Haisa Bishvil Rachmanusai, because the main general concept of all creation was for the sake of God's mercy, his compassion, as we said above. And the creation was through the words, as we said above. And we find that in everything that is created within the empty vacuum, there is a withdrawal of God's mercy. Meaning a particular small measure, because God had to withdraw and constrict his mercy in order to create each thing in the universe with the form and the image that it has, because according to the level of mercy that's required for this thing to exist. Because the attribute of the divine mercy requires that this thing should be thus, because mercy is the root of all of creation, because everything was created in order to reveal God's mercy, as we said above. And this is what it means Uleman Tisaper Bos Nevincha Ven Vincha, in order to tell over into the ears of thy son and thy son's son. Meaning, until here is the mercy that a father has on his son, as Rashi says in Genesis, in his commentary on Genesis 21:23, that it says that you should not lie to my grandson, my great-grandson, and my grandson, because that which comes after creation, there it's possible to tell over and to speak and to grasp the withdrawal of his mercy in order that it exists in everything, because until here the mercy of the Father, meaning that in this thing there's so much mercy, and in this thing there's so much in this thing there's so much mercy, and in this thing there's so much mercy. And this is the meaning of it's halalti b'Mitzrayim, that's which I was elevated in Egypt. Oh, I hope Happy Avenue is happy today. This is the concept of the klipas, the forces of evil, of impurity, the shells, the husks, that comes from there being too much light because of the breaking of the vessels. Because I was elevated, ki salalti, Rashi explains, sichachti. I joked around, meaning that I made a joke and foolishness in the world, which is the concept of the klipas, the concept of the shells, the forces of impurity and evil. Or also just, it's not only evil and impurity, but it's also sometimes just plain existence. Just secular things, what are not necessarily evil. Oh, damn it! Baruch Hashem. Alright, I'm able to stop. Whoa, alright. I'm sorry for cursing. The klipa, I shouldn't have gone down Happy Avenue, I should have just continued on the 55. Baruch Hashem, so the klipas are the opposite of holiness. Just like someone who's imitating or making fun of something, or making foolish, or he's making fun of his friends, because it's just like a monkey who is joking around and trying to imitate a human being, like someone who's mocking his friend or imitating his friend. And this is what it means, and my signs that I placed within them, because there, the word sign, osos, is osios, is letters, because they come from that there's too much light, and that's what caused the vessels to break, like we said above. And therefore, v'yadatem kini Hashem, and you shall know that I am the Lord, because there you're able to recognize God, because there are sparks of holiness and letters, as we said above. Meaning even within joking around, even within humor, even within mockery. Because that's the concept of the klipa, that's the concept of the shell, of the husk, of the forces of evil, which is the concept of the first type of heresy, as we said before, which comes from the concept, from the archetype of there being too much light, as we said above. And also there you can recognize God, because consider it is said, the Mishnah says you should know, meaning be connected to intimately, what you should answer to a heretic, as we said above, because it's possible to find there the letters and the sparks to respond to them, because they come from Shviras HaKelim, they come from the broken vessels, as we said above. And this is what it means, V'yavai Moshe el Parai. And then Moses came to Pharaoh. And then what he said, tomorrow I'm going to bring locusts into thy borders. Tomorrow is the concept, is the archetype of the future, the eschatological future. Because in the future, ki mocher lekabel socher. Right? The Gemara says, in the future, tomorrow, you will receive a reward. This is the archetype of Ansa Bitzid Kasi, Biyom Machar. Oh, this is going to be fun. And I hope there's no other cars coming. Oh, and I hope this deer stays out of the way too. It's going to answer for me my righteousness on the day of tomorrow. Ooh. Oy taten himmel. Hainu, which means Bechinas Kibbul Hasachar Lasad Lavo. It's the archetype of receiving the reward in the future. And then Vaz Yavinu Bechinas Achol Panoi. Then we will understand the archetype of the empty vacuum, which it comes from the tzimtzum, comes from the withdrawal of God's light. How it is possible that really godliness is there within the Cholol Panoi. Elikus, godliness is within the empty vacuum. It's not really empty. It's just an optical delusion, as Einstein said. How it's possible that really godliness is there, but despite that, it's still an empty vacuum, as we said above. How could that be? It's two opposites. That's what it says itself, the receiving of the reward, because the main receiving the reward is in the future, the eschatological future, when we understand things and we understand what all this was about. We see all the horrible things in the world, and the reward will be, we'll understand it. We're going to understand. Why did God create mosquitoes? Why is there wars? Why was there a Holocaust? Why was there all these things? We'll understand, and everything else. We'll understand everything. Why am I sliding on this ice right now, on the snow? We will understand what was impossible to understand in this world. I mean, I know it's because of my many sins, but why did I even do sins? And then we'll know that this empty space, the archetype of the empty space, the archetype of the vacuum, is the archetype of the locust. Because the Medrash says it's like a locust, like a grasshopper, that its garment is from itself, right? They create an exoskeleton. And it's brought in all the Sifrei Kabbalah, all of the Kabbalistic literature, that this is the archetype of the secret of the empty vacuum. The garment is the archetype of the tzimtzum, of the withdrawal, of the empty space. That through this, it created the archetype of the garments. And you understand that it's from itself, that really godliness is there, meaning that everything's made out of God. So even the levush, like this is the way the Pisetzner said it over, that even the dofnei hakelim are made from the or. That the Pisetzner said that the Mekubalim, he says this in Mavei Yesharim, that the Mekubalim, I don't think I can even make my round. The Mekubalim revealed that everything are kelim malei or. They're all vessels filled with the light of God. But the Hasidim revealed, the Derech of Baal Shem Tov revealed, that the Dofnei HaKelim are themselves or. That the walls of, like, let's say, is a cup filled with water, the cup itself is like maybe made out of ice. It's made out of water also. Everything, meaning that everything is God. And so the same idea of the locust with its exoskeleton, that it's not like we put on a polyester jacket or a wool jacket or cotton, and the wool we take from a sheep, or the cotton we take from the plant. But rather, the locust, the grasshopper, all the insects, their exoskeleton comes from themselves. All right, they eat food and that's how they create it, but whatever it is. But it's not a separate material the way that that we have. And despite that, it's still considered to be like an exoskeleton. It's still considered to be a garment. It's still and the garment in the world is the archetype of the tzimtzum, of the withdrawal of God's light, which is the archetype of the empty space, of the vacuum. And this is the archetype of the ansabi tzidkasi b'yom, and it will answer for me my righteousness on the day of tomorrow, because my righteousness is the archetype of garments. Where do we derive that from? Because it's the archetype of what is written in the book of Job, chapter 29, verse 14, Tzedek Lavashti, that you garbed me, you made a garment for me out of righteousness. Because then, on the day of tomorrow, in the eschatological future, when we'll be receiving the reward, and there'll be the revelation of the secret of the archetype of the garments, the archetype of the tzimtzum, the archetype of the withdrawal of God's light, the archetype of the empty space, of the vacuum, as we said above, then will be the revelation of Rosh Hashanah, of the head of faith, that we mentioned above. The archetype of Tavoy Tishri Rosh Hashanah. You come and sing with me from the head of faith, as we said above, which is the archetype of the highest level of music, which even it seems that the quantum physicists know something about, which is the head of faith, as we said above, that through this will cancel all the confusions. Baruch Hashem, I made a home. We learn Torah together. That we should be able that through it will cancel all the confusion that's in the empty space. I'm going to get rid of this, as we said above. I'll get this. All right, are we almost done with this? And this is, behold, I bring tomorrow the locusts, which is the first letters, it's an acronym for, or anagram for, acronym for Achen Ruach Hu Benosh. It says in Job chapter 32, verse 8, therefore there is spirit in the mortal man, which is the spirit is the wind, like a wind instrument. That's the archetype of music, which is the archetype of wind, like a wind instrument. Or even you sing, you're creating wind, right? You speak, but which then will be the revelation of the tune and the hymn of the head of faith, of the first faith, of the top faith, as we said above. And through this will cancel all types of heresy, even the heresy of the empty space, of the vacuum, as we said above. All right, that's it. So we're looking forward to the day when all the heresy will be destroyed. I'll tell you like this. One of my friends, he said about the Darban and German that we talked about before, that he has him in mind by Vilam Alshinim. And I told him I have him in mind by Hashivenu. And that should understand what that means. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment, and we'll see you later. Baruch Hashem. All right, how do I turn this thing off? This one? There?